Blossom, I'm ashamed of you. Not because of your video, but the fact that you have the objectively worst Powerpuff Girls character in your username. Now that shit is inexcusable. Context, this guy named Ethan made a rant on the SpongeBob episode One Course Meal. Now, SpongeBob being the best-selling anime of all time and all that, this caused the Anime Nation to attack, otherwise known as Cherry Blossom, and now I am here to make a biased video on it.
I believe the only way to make a Wendy's old-fashioned hamburger is to beat the customers, and here's why.
I know some of you have already mentioned in the previous SpongeBob episode about the writers that wrote this one, the notorious Casey and Zeus. Yes, that's right. These two nitwits have written this one. Shocker, huh?
Oh geez, how mature. Nothing screams take me seriously more than insulting the writers of the show during your review. Anyone watching this video who wants to become a critic of any kind, don't do this. It makes the people behind the cartoon you are critiquing less inclined to listen to your critiques, and I wouldn't blame them because I don't know about you, but I don't think I take very kindly to being called a nitwit just because I wrote a bad cartoon episode.
First of all, nitwit? Is that seriously the insult we're complaining about here? I guess you can call this subjective if you really want, but this is a pretty lightweight insult and it really shouldn't be that big of a deal as you make it out to be. I mean, at the very least, they weren't being called Brokenside fans. Now that's an insult that would go too far. And second, the point of you saying that it makes the writers less inclined to listen to his critiques is rather shaky. Not only since you don't know these writers personally and therefore wouldn't know how they would respond to being called nitwits, but also because it presumes that Ethan is doing this review for the sake of constructive criticism in the first place. For all you know, Ethan could just be reviewing this episode just to review it and give his thoughts. I mean, unless he specifically stated the point of his video, which you failed to show us. So overall, Ethan doesn't really have to go in with the specific intent of constructively criticizing Casey and Zeus.
Plankton has them trapped. SpongeBob gives away the location of the formula. But then all of that gets interrupted with the plot point that makes this episode fall deep off a cliff. When Pearl comes in, it turns out that Plankton has a phobia of whales. Now, from what I've read scientifically, that may or may not be accurate, but I don't remember seeing too much about it saying that whales eat plankton. So, if it turns out that it's wrong, then they really screwed it up. That Casey and Zeus would have really screwed this up if it turns out that they're wrong about the fact that whales actually don't eat plankton. Then that would have turned out that they were scientifically inaccurate, adding to the major list of screw-ups they've already done.
Ignoring the spite towards Casey and Zeus, which I will continue to harp on,
Please motherfucking don't.
have we seriously gotten to the point of penalizing cartoons for scientific inaccuracies? How does something so minuscule affect the writing quality of the episode in any way? Oh, that's right, it doesn't. So pipe down.
How would this affect the writing in any way? I mean, it wouldn't make any fucking sense. If they're wrong about what a certain animal eats, then that would just create confusion as to why Plankton is scared of Pearl in the first place. It's a bigger problem than you realize, and you trying to arbitrarily label it as a nitpick is rather dismissive, if anything. Though, there is actually a way you could have actually made a point to Ethan here. Hey, Ethan, you say that whales don't actually eat plankton, when after just one Google search, I found that baleen whales actually do eat plankton. Now, sure, this wouldn't exactly apply in Pearl's case as she's a sperm whale, and sperm whales don't have baleen, instead have teeth, but you saying that whales as a whole don't eat plankton is wrong. Not to mention how you just don't give a definitive answer as to how the writers are even wrong, as you just say, well, maybe they're wrong about it, which shows that you didn't do as much research as you thought you did. Now, I did much more research, like literally, I had to spend 3 minutes doing that shit. That's dedication, ho.
Right now, I'm going to have a hot and juicy hamburger with mustard, pickle, and your best friend.
Plankton is trying to end himself by getting run over by a bus. And then to make it even worse, he then says, oh, just go ahead and step on me. And then SpongeBob says, oh, but that would fly in the face of my good nature. Good nature, SpongeBob, considering some of the last few episodes where you were a problem, which thankfully you're not the major issue here. Because, like I've said, in episodes where Mr. Krabs is more the bad guy, SpongeBob is surprisingly the straight man where he knows what's up. He knows Krabs is doing wrong. But yes, Plankton has given up all hope where he wants to get run over by a bus or stepped on by SpongeBob to end his life. So that, Casey and Zeus, you two are nothing but bottom of the barrel scumbags for thinking that suicide is funny. It's not funny. Everybody knows it's a serious thing to deal with, especially if they had a relative, a friend, a loved one, end up doing something like this. It is horrible to go through. And to think that it would make for a good joke, that just shows that you two did not know what you were doing here. This is your biggest disaster of all.
I really don't like this level of hate and vitriol being thrown at someone whose worst crime is writing a bad episode of a cartoon. Ignoring how you completely misread the scene of the episode in question, do you realize you are addressing real people with real feelings? Because it genuinely feels like you don't understand that, given how vitriolic you are towards these writers.
That is literally not it. He's getting onto their case for not treating the topic of suicide with the seriousness that it needs. That's more than just simply making a bad episode, as you put it. And I mean, yes, you did point out earlier in the part that I skipped where you said that you misread the quote-unquote joke But this is a point that specifically ignores that for the sake of pointing out his vitriol, so this wouldn't exactly be important in this case. I also noticed that the whole "the writers are real people" thing sounds very much like an appeal to emotion fallacy, as they're trying to make Ethan feel guilt rather than actually making an argument to what he said. And after this, Wasm has a point that, while I do feel that they kind of take what Ethan says a little bit too seriously, I can't exactly argue with them, so let's move on to final thoughts. This was definitely a first commentary, and no, that's not to say that's inherently a bad thing, as a lot of us in the CC didn't exactly start off with our best work. I mean, hell, just look at my first commentary for proof of that. But yeah, this commentary definitely has first comm syndrome written all over it. There are some bad points, but nothing I would consider to be downright awful or anything. My suggestion is to improve on your argumentative skills above all else. Avoid dismissing a person's points and actually debunk what they have to say. Also, I know this will become a lot easier as I make more commentaries, but try to find something that makes you stand out in the CC. It's not something that will affect your points all that much, but it will definitely help in making you stand out. I see a lot of potential in you when it comes to commentaries, so I'm hoping that this video will help in this regard.